Hi, my name is Femi, and I'll be doing the AP question for our quideo chapters 12 through 14. A rural county hospital offers several health services. The hospital administrators conducted a poll to determine whether the residents' satisfaction with the available services depends on their gender. A random sample of 1,000 adult county residents were selected. The gender of each respondent was recorded, and each was asked whether he or she was satisfied with the services offered by the hospital. The resulting data are shown in the table below, which is the table right here. So A, using a significance level of 0.05, conduct an appropriate test to determine if for adult residents of this county there's an association between gender and whether or not they are satisfied with services offered by the hospital. So for this we'll be using a chi-square test. So our null hypothesis would be that there's no association between satisfaction and gender. And our alternative would be that there is an association between satisfaction and gender. So moving on to our assumptions, our conditions. All of our numbers need to be greater than 1, which in this case it is. Our lowest value is 80. It tells us that it's an SRS, randomly selected 1,000 adult county residents. And at least 80% of our expected values are above 5. So first we have to calculate that in order to check it off. So how do we calculate the expected values? We look at the column total times the row total divided by the grand total. So how does this work? For the satisfaction of the males, we would calculate this by doing our column total, which is 468, times our row total, which is 800, divided by the grand total, which is 1,000. 1,000 people were surveyed. And we would get a value of 371.2. Since we can't have 0.2 of a person, we round that off to 371. And so on. We do that for the rest. For the remaining 3 positions. So our formula is the sum of the observed minus expected squared divided by our expected. This will give us a chi-square number. So you can do this 2 ways. You can either do it by hand or you can do it by calculator, which I did both, so I'll be giving the answer to both. So once you put these into your formula, our data that we just gained using our expected and our observed, we find that our chi-square value is 4.246. But to continue on, if we're using for both actually, if we're using the calculator or the table, we would need to know the degrees of freedom. How do we find the degrees of freedom? For a two-way table like this one, we would do our column minus 1 multiplied by the row minus 1. In this case, there's 2 columns and 2 rows, so 2 minus 1 times 2 minus 1, which ultimately equals 1. So our degrees of freedom is equal to 1. So when we look at our table, this value lies in between 0.025 and 0.05. So it's greater than 0.025, it's greater than 0.025, but less than 0.05. If you do this on your calculator, you get an exact p-value of 0.042445659. So our conclusion, we reject the null hypothesis. Since our p-value, which is equal to 0.0424, so on, that number, or you can use that, either one work, is less than our alpha value of 0.05. So we can conclude by saying that there there might be an association. So we move on to B. Is 800 over 1,000, which is equal to a probability of 0.8, a reasonable estimate for the proportion of all adult county residents who are satisfied with the services offered by this hospital? Explain why or why not. So where did they get the 800 from? Looking at our observed values, there's 800 total males and females that were satisfied of the hospital. So 800 over 1,000, which is what they estimated. So it's asking us, is this a good estimate? Yes or no? So in this case, yes it is. It's a good, reasonable estimate because it is an SRS, as it states in the question. And also our conditions are narrow enough to fit with our data. If it said, for example, for all the county residents throughout the world, then this might not have worked because maybe one county is just not good enough for the entire county hospitals throughout the world. But since it asks for this county, we can conclude by saying that 0.8, the probability 0.8 is a good estimate. Thank you very much.